Certainly. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras c'est porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillant exploit. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much, Joel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. We'd like to see if there are any addendum items tonight, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
I'd entertain a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Doucette.
He's been such a long time. Yeah, I haven't been. It's been a while.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried? Are there any disclosures of interest tonight? There being none, that be so noted. Adoption of the minutes of the meeting of the whole 13-16 held on July 11th, 2016. Moved by Councillor Desmarais, seconded by Councillor Main. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We move on to determination of items requiring separate discussions. Anyone on my left? Anyone on my right? Councillor Desmarais.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 12.
Thank you. Any more?
2, please.
Yes. Item number 2. Thank you, Mr. Main. Anyone else? Then I ask for a motion to approve those items, not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Main. All those in favor? Carried. We have a presentation this evening, and I'll come down to the podium to do that. It's an honor this evening to recognize, on behalf of members of City Council, co-workers, and the citizens of the City of Port Colborne, one of our employees who has served 25 or over 25 years. That employee is Heather Mahan. Heather, could you come forward, please? Nice to see you. When this is over, would you like to play a few words?
I just want to thank everybody.
Not yet, not yet, not yet.
Okay.
Anyway, Heather started her career with the City of Port Colborne in 1991. She was hired July 22nd on a part-time basis in the Economic Development Office as a secretarial assistant. On June 1st, 1992, Heather was hired on a full-time basis as secretary for the Economic Development Officer. And on August 1st, 2003, Heather became the planning clerk / technician in the planning department. Heather has been a part of the planning for events such as Tall Ships back in 2001, and development of the trail system and West Street Promenade. In her role in the planning department, She assists residents with making their dreams become reality through planning applications and variances. She's a very key person that our citizens love, especially when there's positive responses to their inquiries. Heather is quite a milestone to reach 25 years, as everyone here can attest. And we thank you for your dedication to the city. I have a plaque here this evening to present to yourself in recognition of 25 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Port Colborne, and present to you by myself as mayor. Thank you. And we have a little gift here that recognizes your maybe I should help you with it. I don't want to. You're going to open that here or wait till after?
I'll wait till after.
Okay. And now I'll say, is there anything you'd like to see, Heather? Say it.
I think I've already said it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for 25 years of loyal service. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Try to carry this instead of dropping this.
Remember Heather when she was a young girl going to elementary school and then high school.
Yes.
Just like that. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Couple of this.
Okay, we'll move on to the mayor's report. We have a delegation this evening. Cynthia Skinner, could you come forward? On behalf of the Friends of Port Colborne Lighthouse. Cynthia, there's a little button there, if you could push that right in front of you. Now you have 10 minutes to provide us with your report.
Worshipful Mayor, Council, Press, and fellow citizens. My group is having their final meeting tonight for Canal Days, so I'm here alone. I'm happy to return once again to ask our mayor and council to declare August 7th Lighthouse Day here in Port Colborne. First declared in the late 1700s, it is now celebrated worldwide. Port and Fort Erie were the first two Ontario cities to join the growing number of communities recognizing the historic importance of lighthouses to their economy and culture. With increasing visitation to lighthouses worldwide, recognition of this day garners us global attention as we plot and plan for the future heritage status and control over our lighthouses. Our group of volunteers represents an enormous talent pool. Professional engineer, college instructor, retired and active teachers, management level and industry, hazmat, environment, safety, sailing, nurses, tourism, and other specialties. For Canal Days, we will again offer nonstop trips as weather permits. Our new lease allows us 10 days access, which unfortunately does not encompass Lighthouse Day. In future, we hope it will, and be more flexible. Each year, we have capacity for our transportation and volunteers' endurance out there in the wind and the sun. So enthusiasm is definitely there. Unlike in the beginning, we are now restricted to visitors seeing the main light only, as we have no permission to use the breakwall. It would take a second vessel and captain to ferry visitors from one light to the other, which is not feasible for our small group at this time. It is a restriction we must live with, ever hopeful of better arrangements and long-range local control of these lights. Last summer, we hosted our first bus tour and hope for more. We now have a stock of souvenirs, some created by our own members, and a flag to fly on Lighthouse Day over City Hall, and a superb website up and running and well viewed. Now a member of MONA, we affiliate with a parent organization. The Lighthouse is a mini seasonal museum. MONA is the county-wide museum organization where expertise and info is shared. Additionally, we keep in touch with area lighthouses, exchange news, and occasional visits. Originally, we had the loan of Pocomar to ferry our visitors. Now we have the loan of a member's pontoon boat. And we were gifted with a large number of life jackets. Community support with thanks. Where do our visitors come from? Near and far. The tour bus represented people who had seen hundreds of lights. One year we had a student from France whose last name was the French spelling of Abano. She had no idea there was an Abano lighthouse near. Many others are from Texas and Florida, being expats of Western New York. Much of southern Ontario is represented. Some visitors and family and descendants of former lightkeepers, both here and elsewhere. While manning our table at Dunnville days, we met a geophysicist, Ken McMillan, who decades ago, he and his team GSP'd the 3 area lighthouses, Abano, Dunkirk, and ours. They left behind the mark where the measurement was taken, an etched cross in the concrete covered by paint to preserve it. So this year our guides can look for it and point it out to our visitors. With this brief overview of our group's effort to help put Port Colborne on the global map of must-see lights and hospitable places to visit, we hope that you will support our request and declare August 7th our city's Lighthouse Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Perhaps just ask members of council if anyone has a question. Councilor Roger.
Thank you. I'd just be really happy to support this, Cynthia. And Niagara South Coast Tourism Association has just received a grant from the Tourism Partnership of Niagara. And together we're going to partner with Friends of the Lighthouse. I don't even know whether you know this yet. We've just been granted it. And we're going to, it's going to be for some updated brochures for the 2 lighthouses and distribution. And we're happy to do it, and I think this is a great thing.
Marvelous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Wagner. Are there any other questions of members of council? There being none, thank you, Cynthia. We will deal with your request for proclamation in the next regular meeting of council, which follows immediately after this meeting. Moving on to Mayor's report. First of all, I'll deal with a meeting with Minister Hoskins, Minister of Health. Mayor Jeff Campion and myself met with Minister Hoskins at Queen's Park regarding health services in South Niagara. The discussions were very cordial. He was well briefed on the file. He knew his material. He advised that nothing had been finalized regarding a new hospital in Niagara Falls, still very much in the planning stages, or continuous services at the Welland Hospital. He encouraged us to make representations to his office at our leisure, and we're given the name of a contact person. So those were very encouraging remarks, but battle's far from over, that's for sure. The Port Colborne Concert Band, I'll bring that up. We support this through our federal grants through the old Hydro Fund, and it's been playing at the old band shell at H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park literally for decades. And it continued, I think it was 30 years under Mark Fairchild, and now it continues under his daughter's direction. And that's on Thursday nights at 7:20 p.m. So there are, I believe, two meetings left. And I would encourage you, it's a great place for people to come and just watch and listen on the cool breezes of Lake Erie. Canal Days, we all know. The city will host Canal Days Festival this weekend. Our citizens will be joined by thousands of visitors, all of which will enjoy themselves immensely. Last year there was roughly 410,000 people here on that 4-day weekend, and we have statistics on this if you'd like to consult me later, but it was a good, another good weekend. It was hot, and that's what we pray for at this stage. All the planning is done. by a wonderful group of volunteers. We're just ready for the actual event, and we pray for good weather and no rain. The Wayne Flint Bog Fire, just an update. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority acknowledged the efforts of our region's firefighters and the province's forest rangers for their efforts in extinguishing the fire in the Wayne Flint Bog, and Deputy Chief Mendia was amongst those who were recognized. The Niagara Region Police Services Board held their monthly meeting in Port Colborne right here in this chamber last week. It was the first time ever that a meeting had been held outside of their headquarters, and they were very impressed with your council chamber, and there were many residents who showed up to voice their concerns, and the board was very responsible, and it was people in the East Village that were particularly had a particular profile. So I think that was perhaps we've started something that I'd like to move out of their territory on a regular basis, but we were the first, and we'd love to have them back again. It was a very good meeting. Anyway, well, that's enough of my report. Move on to Regional Councilor is not with us this evening. Regional Council is not meeting in the month of August, so we probably won't see him until September. Are there any councilors' items that they wish to bring up? Any issues, any inquiries? Yes, Councilor Doucette. And then Councilor Danch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a warning to citizens in Port Colborne. I went to get my grandson in Fort Erie this morning, and when I got back, I had a message on my phone, and it said to the effect that the CRA was calling and it was time sensitive and we had to make sure to call right away because. So I called. It was a scam, by the way. According to them, I owed CRA $4,200, and if I didn't pay them right away, I was going to owe them $72,000. How they went from 42 to 72, I don't know, but anyway. Oh yeah, that too. They were coming to arrest me, that too. I want citizens to be aware that, you know, they were so aggressive that I could very easily see seniors getting really scared real fast and paying it off and winding up giving them a lot of money. So I just want to make sure the citizens are aware that's happening, and they are now in our phone book. They're calling our numbers. So be very careful and very cautious. The CRA will not call you and do that in any way, shape, or form. Please be aware of that. Okay? It was interesting. It was interesting. I let him on for a while, and then finally I told him, I said, well, why don't you give me my social insurance number just to make sure that you are talking about the same file. Oh, no, can't do that. I said, well, then it looks like we don't have anything else left to talk about. And I hung up. Just be careful, okay? Please be careful. They're out there, and they're calling. Number two, for me, anyway, it turns out, I don't know why, I always thought we had a limit on certain pets in the city. We have limits on dogs only. We don't have limits on cats. I got a call, I fielded a call over the weekend with the possibility of there being upwards of 50 cats in a house on the island. I sent it out, spoke to the Humane Society, and there's nothing they can do because we do not have a bylaw of any kind that deals with the number of animals, cats specifically in this case, that any individual can have, which creates a lot of problems. If this individual has 50 plus cats, okay, what I'm getting is smells coming out of the house, and so on and so on and so on and so on. I can keep going, but I'm not going to do that. We need something, at least try to put together something that we can give the Humane Society and that we can pass here that will make sense. 50 plus cats doesn't make sense to me. Okay? And actually the person said a lot more than that, and I just put down 50 plus. Okay? So I don't know if we need to give direction to Mr. Aquilina to say, can you please have bylaw people take a look at this? Let's look at numbers. My biggest concern is if we have numbers, how do we regulate the numbers? But at least if there's a call like this that comes in, Humane Society can then go in and say, oh, hold on a minute, you can't have all these cats. Right now, they can't even do that. They can't even go into the home and say, you have too many cats, there's all this kind of stuff going on. They cannot do anything. Because I had a chat with Humane Society today for something like about an hour. So we need something to limit the numbers, strictly because of the dangers that it can create for humans and the dangers for the animals themselves. It's not safe for the animals. Now, we do have our feral cat program, but the feral cat program can only do so much. We also have to help out the feral cat program as well, and I think this is a way of doing it. So I don't know if we can do it right now. We can give direction to Dan to see if the bylaw people can take a look at it and see if they can put something together that would at least limit the numbers. Through you, sir, maybe Dan can answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette. Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Doucette. I think really it's what does the council want to have? We've heard the municipality to the north have had a number of concerns that have been raised about regulating cats. So if council just wants a bylaw dealing with the number of cats you can have, the next step is how do you regulate that? Dogs, they need a license. Do we want people to then have a license from the municipality for a cat? If so, what would be that number? So that's what the direction, and I caution council if that's what you want to do, or we can bring a report forward, but I think I need to have that assurances that's what you're looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina.
The only suggestion I would have is that we can have that discussion when a report comes in giving us the options. And what you were talking about were the options that we need to know about that we can regulate and control and then go from there. Once we've done that, then Humane Society can act. Until we do that, Humane Society is telling me point blank, we don't have the power to do anything at all.
Mr. Bodner, do you have any comments on this issue?
I have some concerns about it.
I did, but I think Councillor Doucette is right. If we at least get the options, then we'll know what to do. And I think we dealt with this some time ago, or had this brought up like years ago, but I can't remember. Dan?
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner, that's correct. Former Councillor Phil Steele, was to bring forward an actual draft bylaw to council. They have a working committee that never materialized, just kind of fizzled away.
If there are no further comments on this issue, Mr. Aquilina, would it be possible to have a report to give us some idea what our options are and what can be legally enforced?
We can do that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Councillor Kennedy, did you have a...
I have another item, though.
Okay, but we're there.
You sure it's not over there?
No, I think, well, Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, I know, but go ahead.
Go ahead, Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just in regards to two items we passed this evening, but through you to the fire chief, and they were in regards to the fireworks display by two individuals. And it just said, I wasn't concerned because it said if the current fire ban is still in effect, come these dates, that the Port Colborne Fire and Emergency Services have the right to revoke. But how much notification, I guess, would we be giving these individuals? Because they're going to go out and purchase all these fireworks to hold their display. So to the chief, through you, Mr. Mayor, how much notification would we give them so they don't go out and purchase all these things and not be able to have their display? Thank you.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Kenny. We've never really run into this before. We've never had a dry spell where we've had fireworks displays. a lot of private displays are done over the course of, within a bylaw that's required of them. These two are kind of out of the ordinary because they're being done by Red Boss, professional organization that's going to set them off. They're fully licensed. We would normally go and do an inspection during the course of the week prior, the same as what we do here. In all likelihood, I would suggest that we'd be looking at this approximately a week in advance in each site. Probably not going to be a problem if we continue to get some rain as we did today, but if it dries up as it has in this last 2 months, then certainly it's going to be a problem for us. But we would give them at least a week's notice. We'd go and visit each site.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's what I needed to know. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there's more questions on this issue. Go ahead.
Chief, what is required of a person that wants to do this, these two people? Do they have to notify the neighbors around them that they're having this, you know? I'm just thinking it'd be kind of a shock if, you know, and this isn't like your average backyard fireworks. Sounds like it's going to be bigger than that. So do we have any regulation on contacting the neighbors? Thanks.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bodner, no, there's nothing in the bylaw that says the neighbors have to be notified. There are clearances required from buildings, property lines, and things of that nature, depending on the size of the display, the diameter of the fireworks they're shooting. Those all come into play with regards to distance. But no, there's nothing in the current bylaw that says neighbors must be notified. This is relatively new. It's come upon us the last couple of years. In fact, I think this is the first time that I can recall private displays coming to council with the exception of Humberston Speedway, to be quite honest. I've never seen it, I don't believe, come forward to us in the past. And I think it's because one of these two displays is being done by a representative of Red Boss. It's actually for his wife's, their anniversary. And the other one is being done by Red Boss on behalf of the person that's applied for the permission of council. We were notified through email. I told my fire prevention officer to go and review the sites, review the plans, and have the owners of the property submit to council for permission because of what they were proposing to do. One of the debates I've had and discussions I've had with both my deputy and my fire prevention officer, what is the definition of a public display? We all know what a public display is when we hold them here in the city, but when you're doing it on your private properties, it's still a public display. That's the debate we have, because they're doing it with invited guests to come to their properties to do it. So we need to more clearly define exactly what a public display is, and unfortunately that's not been done with the bylaw. It is going to be reviewed. There are a number of changes. In fact, it may affect our fireworks bylaw considerably because the federal act has changed significantly, and it's going to impact us as far as the municipality goes for future displays.
Thank you, Chief. Very right. Go ahead, Mr. Ryder.
So then you're saying the bylaw is going to be reviewed, and if it is, I'd certainly like to see some indication that the neighbors are going to be, you know, notified. Just as an example, if you're in the rural area, there was a case where a lady had peacocks, and the noise actually from the construction on the highway, the peacocks, two of them took off. They were extremely scared, and they were wandering around fire lane 5 and 10 for, you know, there was sightings, and it was hard to believe to people that there was a peacock on their front porch until it appeared on mine. And you know, I thought there might have been some wine involved in some of the other ones, but they assured me there wasn't. So, but anyways, there's consideration. You know, these are going to be big bangs that go off, and somebody that doesn't know what's going on is going to be, you know, and so there's nothing we can do now because the bylaw doesn't require anything. I'd certainly like to, I don't know how to do this, but make a request to those people that are having it that they should let at least the immediate neighbors know what's going on.
Your Worship, if I could, I'll take it upon myself to ensure that both of these people are notified that we're wishing that they speak to the neighbors, let them know what's going on. The reality of the situation is, if these reports had been pulled, we could have had that debate tonight, and maybe council would have decided not to allow it because it's kind of out of the ordinary because of what they're planning on doing. Obviously, it's too late for that at this particular time, so we will certainly talk to both the owners of these properties and have them speak to their neighbors as best they can. Although, depending on the size of them, you know what the sound travels. And unfortunately, it's going to be 2 consecutive weekends that it's going to occur.
Thank you, Chief. Are you finished, Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Elliott?
I am.
I'm up. Perfect. Thank you. I got a few points to bring up for discussion. I'll direct this to Mr. Hanson. When we sold the lots at CMT School, the first few lots that were sold had a fee, park dedication fee, that was supposed to be for the basketball court at Sunset Park. I did have an inquiry from one of the people that were first to build. They wanted to know the status of that, and their comment was, since we waived it for the rest of the houses that were built subsequent to them, if the basketball court was not built, they would like a refund of their money that was supposed to be dedicated to that. So are we in the process of getting that finished?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Elliott. Yes, the design's finished. We've actually got quotes on the basketball apparatus, and that's the backboards and so on. That's all in the works, and it's in the queue, and it's definitely going to be built. And we're doing our best to keep that within the budget that was allocated for the work.
Okay. Any timeline on that?
I'll have to get back to you on that. It's, as I said, it's in the queue. There's quite a number of projects in there right now. Okay. I know the design's complete, so we're actually thinking where the previous ball diamond was, just off the end of Ash Street, would be a good location for it. So we're investigating that as a location, and we have the design. So I'll get back to council on the actual timing of the installation.
Okay, thanks. And while I'm speaking to you, I'll ask you one other thing. I had asked earlier about a report or just a quote for poles to put on the roads. I guess we're probably looking at King Street because Main Street's a regional road, to put up banners. The question did come up at the Canal Days Committee last Wednesday. If we had them or why we didn't have them and could we get them. And I had brought up that I had asked before here. So I'm just wondering if we've ever got a price on them. You see them in different cities, right, where we run the banners across. We could put up for Canal Days, flavors, different events that are going on in town. We ever get a quote on that?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Elliott, I'm not aware of a quote on the banner poles. We certainly can do that. There are special poles that are built for that purpose. Many times we get requests to put banners up on street light poles, but those aren't specifically designed to take the wind loading and so on from a banner. So we can definitely get quotes on that, and then I would say get an appropriate location, probably possibly on King Street for the installation.
Can you get a quick price on it? Yes. Whenever you can?
Yes, we will.
Next meeting or meeting after that. Two other issues. One, I noticed today, and I was talking to Councillor Main earlier too, when you come into town down the 140 and you're coming into Main Street, the island where you're turning to go west on Main Street as you come in. I know it's MTO property, but the island is absolutely disgusting with the weeds that are growing on it. And also their road allowance along the northern part of Main Street as you come around that curve coming into a couple of residences along there, and as you're coming up to Moe's Restaurant. It's really, really shabby, and actually it's disgusting. And we've got quite a few people coming into town this weekend for Canal Days. If we could contact the MTO, if they're not going to cut it, let's get our guys out to at least cut it, send the MTO the bill, whatever we want to do. But let's get it to look attractive for people that are coming in, because quite frankly, I couldn't believe how long they were in the island when I come in. And then I took a look to the right as I was driving along, and in between the sidewalk and the curb, it's they're overgrown as well. So if we could get that looked after, that would be fabulous before this weekend. And one other issue that I want to bring up came forward at Canal Days, and it's an issue that I think has been ongoing for the last couple of years. We do ban animals on the festival grounds. We do have signs up, and if we could get this out to the media, that dogs are not permitted on festival grounds for Canal Days. And I believe that this has happened and been an issue for the last couple of Canal Days, especially last year, the year before. It was extremely hot, and there were people that were having their dogs walk on hot pavement, which I don't understand. I don't know why people want to bring their big dogs into our festival grounds. The issue that came up with regard to that was enforcement of the bylaw that says you can't have pets, dogs, on festival grounds, and who enforces that. Discussion centered around the Niagara Regional Police Services and our bylaw department, and it was said that the Niagara Regional Police Service doesn't want to enforce it, and that bylaw really has an issue because, much to our surprise, we've only got 2 bylaw officers that are working that weekend, and they're both basically assigned to parking issues. I know that Councillor Desmarais sits on the committee with me, and as well as several other people. And we were kind of dismayed that there's only 2 bylaw officers that are working on Canal Days weekend, which is when we have the most people come to town. We have plenty of issues that need to be attended to throughout the weekend, and that there's only 2 staff members, and they're both dedicated basically to parking issues, which I get is one of the biggest problems. But the dog issue on festival grounds is another issue that has bothered a lot of people. There's a lot of conversation around it, and we want to know definitively who's going to police it. Who's going to issue tickets? And I think we're past the point of giving warnings out, that it's to the point now where we're going to start issuing tickets for people who bring their pets, especially dogs, into the festival grounds. There's no sense putting up the signs and taking the time to get them made that say no pets allowed and then have people walk their dogs. I believe the Humane Society had an issue with it. The one year was extremely hot because there was no water provided anywhere. There's no watering stations. And it was basically inhumane to have your pets out on the hot pavement with nothing to drink. So I'd like to know why we only have, in the first place, why we only have 2 bylaw enforcement officers scheduled to work on Canal Days when the city's busier than at any other time period during the year. And B, how are we going to enforce this issue, the bylaw, with no pets, if we don't even have people that are in place to serve notice on it? And if we contract the Niagara Regional Police Services to provide protection for Canal Days, why don't they do it? And if they're not going to do it, then we need to get somebody in place to do it. So I'll throw that out to, I guess, Dan, if you can either give us an answer on that or bring back something.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott. The first question, the 3 staff we have in bylaw enforcement, 2 are scheduled. 1 is on vacation for the civic weekend. So there's 2. We do have our student as well, and they are not just going to be doing parking. And the parking is only going to be on a health and safety matter. They're not going to go looking for violators because they'd be busy all day. We're just going to do it based on the complaint, or if we see a safety concern too close to the intersection in front of a hydrant, blocking people's driveways. That's what we'll look at. The question about the dogs, unfortunately, the officers can't ticket because they need to have who those people are. And people could refuse to give that information out. That's why we rely on the police, because they have the ability to ticket. The enforcement staff don't have that ability to actually approach the individual. Who are you? What's your information? I want to find you. What they'll do, and what I expect them to do, is inform the individual that dogs aren't allowed on the property because the Canal Days bylaw, the parks bylaw, specifies the area. So I assume that they will then notify the individual with the dog that they have to remove that dog from the property. We can talk once again to enforcement with the NRP, but unfortunately, like I said, we don't have that legal ability to start issuing tickets. We need to have the information from the individual, and they can refuse, and there's nothing that we can do. The NRP, it's a different story. They have more authority. So I hope I can answer that, answered your questions.
Can I just follow up? Okay. Thanks, Dan. Can we have a conversation with Niagara Regional Police Services then? Because they are under contract to us to provide the service for Canal Days. So as the contractor, should we not be able to dictate what we want them to do, what service they are providing, and that should be one of the services that we require of them?
Through Mr. Mayor, we'll bring that to their attention.
Okay.
That's what we expect from them.
Okay. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but staff did say at the meeting that Niagara Regional Police Services refused to do that service. So if we can't ask people for their names to ticket them, we have to have somebody that can, or there's no sense having the bylaw in place. So if we can look into that prior to the weekend, that would be great.
Thank you, Jack William. Councillor Demray.
If I may, just further to this issue, we do have a problem. We've had it for several years, and it's not just dogs. I've seen rather large lizards, many snakes, rats, ferrets, a hedgehog. People come with all kinds of animals, whether it's to make a public statement or because they're just really truly attached to the animal, I don't know. But it's putting our festival in danger in many ways. Little children being pushed around in strollers, meeting a dog that can be somewhat aggressive, that is not muzzled, and in many cases not even leashed, head on. That's just in hot weather and crowds. That's a recipe for disaster. This has to be dealt with. If we're going to have a bylaw, we need to enforce it. We have the Niagara Regional Police who have said this is not something that they're prepared to do. We have our bylaw enforcement who say it's not something they're prepared to do. And we have the Well and Humane Society who said it's not something they're prepared to do. Okay, so we know who doesn't want to do it, who is going to do it. That's what we need to do. Figure out who's going to do it and get it done. And if we need to hire extra bylaw enforcement for the festival, then that's something that should be included in the Canal Days budget, and we should realistically look at that. That's all I have to say on that matter.
Any response, Mr. Aquilina?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Is there someone else on staff that wanted to make a comment? Yes, Mr. Hakeem.
Your Worships, Councillor Demery and Councillor Elliott, yes, we discussed this at the Canal Days meeting, and I know it was actually shared with staff, but we did consult with bylaw enforcement. Sherry and Gina had a discussion on getting larger signs and things of that nature. But as far as enforcement, we're still not certain exactly who, but I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, the Welland SPCA may be on board to help us out with that. So that's one thing that we'll have to confirm, and I'm certainly open to discussing with Dan further. Perhaps tomorrow we can just get together and solidify that, and we'll get back to you with some definitive answers as far as the kind of support that we'll get. But I know that the signs were prepared in consultation with bylaw enforcement so that they were bigger, better, and a little bit more presentable as far as some of the rules and regulations pertaining to the festival grounds and limitations that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Hakeem. Are there any further comments? Mr. Maine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Hakeem and Dan. The logistics of this is these policemen here are on paid duty, and they make pretty darn good money. And there shouldn't be any excuse whatsoever that they can't do the tickets. We're paying them, but just like Mr. Elliott said, we should be calling the shots. It should be, it's our money. How we collect it, I know we collect it through the vendors and we collect it through the people like the Corps and that who have all these little venues going. We're collecting money, we're paying them. They should be told that this is what we need you to do, and do it. They're paid duty. It's not like they're making minimum wage, or our student bylaw guy shouldn't have to go out there and take all the abuse from the animal owner. That guy that's carrying the Glock and the taser and the bear spray in the club, that should be his responsibility as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Councilor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wondered if we could give direction to our CAO that he speak to the staff sergeant and make that happen. I totally agree with Councillor Maine and Councillor Elliott. They're being paid for a service, and they're contracted out for us for that festival weekend, and that needs to be done. And the best way to do it is hear from either yourself, your worship, or the CAO, and say, That's what we want. That's part of the contract that we want you to do. Thank you.
I know the CEO made a note of.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you.
Okay, are there any responses by members of staff to previous questions prior to this night? There being none, then it's time to move on to consideration of items requiring a separate discussion. That's item number 2. There's more?
Yeah, we have more issues.
Oh, please speak up. Give me a wave.
Oh, I did. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, just a couple of issues here. We've talked about bylaw enforcement quite a lot, but I'd like to move on to the crosswalk, the proposed crosswalk on Main Street East. This would be through you to Mr. Hanson. Ron, can you give us some kind of date? The residents there are really getting quite anxious. School's coming very quickly, and there's no crosswalk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Desmarais. As soon as that was approved by Council, we immediately approached the region, asked them to put it into their books and get this going. Because of the workload, we were informed that it was going to take some time. There has to be a complete design done for the intersection, for the crosswalk, and for the signals. In order to expedite the scheduling on it, we agreed as a city to do the survey of the work, and there was a thought process that would speed up the installation of the signals. So we've taken on hiring the surveyor and getting that done so that it gets into the queue faster from the region side. They haven't given us a firm date. We've asked for it. They haven't given us a firm date on the installation. It's probably going to be in the fall. It certainly won't be done prior to school starting. So that's where it is right now, timing-wise, with the region.
Okay, well, I thank you for that, but I'm really very confused now because I thought we put quite a lot of money aside in our budget because the region was not prepared to go forward with this, and we, as the city, were going to pay for it ourselves and get it done ourselves, and now you're saying we have to wait for the region. So I'm a little confused, and I may have misdirected the residents as a result of it because I gave them the information I had at the time.
Mr. Mayor, through you, just to clarify that point, the region would not fund the pedestrian signals because they did not meet the warrants for the number of people crossing and so on for the intersection. However, they will do the installation, and they're the only agency that can do the installation, them being the road authority for Main Street. They will do the installation, but once it was requested and funded by the city, it went into their queue for projects. They have signals all over the region, both pedestrian and traffic signals they're working on, and it's in their queue. And we're doing everything we can to expedite it by doing some of the work, the preliminary work for it. However, it has to be done by the regional signal people. They may, as they did on some of our signals, sublet that out to other contractors for wiring installation, conduits, this sort of thing. But the actual installation is with the region of Niagara.
Okay, well, I thank you. It's incredibly disappointing, but I will pass that along to the residents so that they are aware of that. I do have one more issue, and that has to do with the usual sprucing up that happens across the city for Canal Days. But this is it's an ongoing issue that happens all summer long. It's the Friendship Trail from Welland Street through to around Davis Street, both sides of the trail, and the railway beside it. It's just full of weeds. There's a lot of litter. It seems to be a popular dumping spot for shopping carts as well. That looks awful because we also offer all kinds of public parking along there for Canal Days. So we have visitors pulling into what really looks terrible. There's no reason not to spruce that up. There's a couple of empty lots that need some cleaning as well. I spoke with Sherry Hansen this afternoon earlier this morning about those things. So that's in the queue, but we all know that they all take time. I think we could just make a little more effort. If we're going to offer parking to people, we should clean those areas up.
Mr. Hanson, do you have a comment?
Mr. Mayor, we will certainly take a look at that tomorrow and ensure that it's being done.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Elliott, then Mr. Dance.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment on Councillor Desmarais and Ron on the crosswalk. Because I got nothing else to do on Monday nights, I happened to be watching Niagara Falls City Council last week. They have the same issue that we have. They asked for a crosswalk on McLeod Road, and the region came back and said that it didn't meet the warrants. So their discussion was around the same thing. They had the same price, about $120,000. They are willing to fund it, but then their discussion turned to their regional counselor, who was in attendance, and suggested that the City of Niagara Falls make a delegation and go to the region to ask for a 50-50 partnership for funding. Again, the same reason as us, it didn't meet the warrants and a number of people crossing the street. And she suggested, I'm trying to think of what the councillor's name was.
Lena Volpatti?
Yes, Councillor Volpatti. She suggested that the city make the delegation to the region to ask for a funding partnership. So while it's troublesome for us to get pushed back in the queue for the region to install ours, it may allow us some time to see what happens with the City of Niagara Falls, and maybe we should, as a city as well, put forward a delegation, go to the region to see if we can get some funding from them as well to partner with the crosswalk cost. I'm not exactly sure when Niagara Falls was going to go, but they sounded like they were going to make it. If council doesn't sit, regional council doesn't sit all of August.
That's right.
So the next meeting would be in September, which would give them ample time to register as a delegation for the first meeting in September. So it would be interesting to see what happens if they appear. And I'm sure that if the region was to fund the City of Niagara Falls, I'm almost positive that they would want to fund partially with the City of Port Colborne as well, because what's good for one should be good for one of the other 12 that are partners in the regional municipality of Niagara. So we'll wait and see what happens and see where we end up in the queue.
Mr. Dash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll direct mine to Ron there, since he seems to be the guy we pick on the most. A couple concerns, and I know this weekend is our big social weekend of the summer, but one of the requests from one of the locals there, with our local market and stuff like that, and not a lot of places to sit. You know, we've got a wonderful market, and it's super busy. I know my wife attends it quite often, but we don't seem to have a lot of tables out there. I think last weekend I saw two tables in a packed downtown core every Friday morning. I was just wondering if maybe we could find 3 or 4 more. I know the Canal Days, it really takes away from the extra tables, but if we can maybe see that next week or two or something like that.
You're talking about George Park?
Yeah, at King George Park.
Mr. Anderson?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Danich, if that's Council's direction, we certainly follow any direction you have. There are some tables in King George Park there right now. If Council directs that we put a couple more in there on Friday mornings, I don't think there's a whole, I think we have about 12 that are used or floated around to different community events and so on. So it's certainly something we could probably do on Friday mornings, put them in and perhaps then use them in other locations as demand requires. Certainly, I have no problem doing that.
And that's understandable, you know, the parks and what the guys have to do. The other concern I had was the four-legged one that was walking around in the markets and whatnot, and I know we're picking on good old dogs there today, but this lady had some issues with, you know, the dogs that were walking through the park or the market and stuff like that. And then, you know, there's food and stuff going on. I mean, just maybe ask maybe if bylaw could do a scoot across the street or a little signage there that asks that, you know, please leash your pet or, you know, leave it at home. And then the final issue, and again, it's the same person, was smoking throughout the market. I guess our city bylaw states or that, you know, you're not allowed to smoke anywhere on city property, and I can say from, you know, being here for the last 6 years, there's not one council member that puffs, and that's a nice thing, because there's no one's waiting for anything and there's nobody out there. So if we can maybe once again see if bylaw could check it out. And that's all my complaints for this week.
Well, thanks, Mr. Danch.
If I could, Mr. Mayor,
yeah?
I'll have bylaw enforcement talk with our market clerk, because she's responsible for all of the happenings that happen in Market Square. So it's definitely something we can have a conversation with her about, for smoking and dogs.
Has everyone canvassed all their issues? Thank you. Shall we move on to items requiring separate discussion then? Mr. Main, that's number 2. You would hold that one?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Planning and Development Bylaw Enforcement Division, report number 2016-113, subject encroachment request 78 Clarence Street.
Seconder for that, Councillor Kenny. Discussion, Councillor Main.
I have every intention of supporting this. My issue with it is if, and I have another ratepayer, a business person downtown, who has the idea that maybe we're going to come up with a new encroachment policy, and I will direct this through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dan Aquilino. If another policy comes up, would these people who put out the $150 or whatever and $50 a year, if that changes within this year, will they fall under the old blanket or the new blanket?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, to Councillor Main, yes, the encroachment policy bylaw is coming to, the review of that is coming to Council August the 8th. I know that we talked about July the 25th, but it didn't make it, but it is coming to Council on August the 8th. If Council directs any change to the bylaw, then it'll be simply going back to reimburse from the May meeting we had when we discussed the whole encroachment policy. So if Council passes this evening and come August the 8th, if they make changes to the bylaw, we'll retroactively reimburse.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Being none, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Move on to item number 12. Madam Emery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chris Grayway, Vice President, Niagara Regional Labour Council, re the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, trade agreement. That the correspondence be received from Chris Grayway, Vice President, Niagara Regional Labour Council, and that it be received for information.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Kenny? Discussion? Councillor Demray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Butters actually alerted me to this and asked me to look at it, and in her absence, would I move forward with it, lift it for her, and I let her know that I would read it and find out about it and then let her know, because I had not really any knowledge of this agreement. So I read the information that was submitted. I went online and did as much research as I could, and it appears that there's not very many people with a lot of knowledge about this agreement. That alone tells me that the recommendation that's contained within the information submitted to us should be supported, and that's what I would like us to do this evening. Is I would like to amend the motion to receive for information and support the resolution contained within the information. And that would be that the Council send a letter to the Minister of International Trade stating that the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, in its present form cannot be supported. And my intent there would be that it needs to go back, have more work done to it, and have far more public opinion brought to it, so there'd be more public knowledge raised about this. Going forward with agreements like this can be dangerous if that is not done. That's what I had to say on it.
Madam Clerk, you have now that the amendment. All right, perhaps we should deal with the amendment first, and then come back to all those in favor of the amendment. Seconder for the amendment, Councillor Doucette. I already picked Councillor Doucette. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? It's carried. Now, do we wish to continue further discussion of the item as amended? Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to tell that Mr. Grayway has gone to all other councils, city councils, and made a presentation. And so they were all met with overwhelming support. And I believe that besides sending the letter off to the Minister of International Trade, I think we should also send it off to our MP and our MPP. and get their support on it as well. I think it's very important too.
Is that a friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment.
You're content, Madam Emery?
Yes.
Everyone agrees to the friendly amendment? Any other discussion? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. That deals with all the items of councilors' concerns. Are there any notices of motion this evening? There be none, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councilor Kenny, seconded by Councilor Doucette. All those in favor? Carried. Move on to our next agenda item. This is the meeting, regular meeting of Council 22-16 on Monday, July 25th. Following the committee of the whole meeting, I'd like to call that to order. Are there any addendum items, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. None this evening.
I entertain a motion to confirm the agenda. Moved by Councilor Kenny, seconded by Councilor Demery. All those in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? There being none, that would be so noted, Madam Clerk. The adoption of minutes, we have the special meeting of Council 20-16 held on July 11, 2016, and the regular meeting of Council 21-16 held on July 11, 2016. Entertain a motion to adopt those minutes. Moved by Councilor Kenny, second by Councilor Maine. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. There being none, approval of items not requiring separate discussion. Moved by Councilor Dance, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor? Carried. We have proclamation. Lighthouse Day, August 7th, Madam Clerk. Moved by Councilor Maine, seconded by Councilor Kenny. All those in favor? Carried. Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. We have the minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of June 14th, 2016, and minutes of the Port Colborne Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting of June 20th, 2016. Can we have a motion to approve those? Moved by Councilor Maine, seconded by Councilor Doucette. All those in favor? Carried. Madam Clerk, do we have consideration of any bylaws this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaws be enacted and passed. Bylaw 63836316 being a bylaw to authorize entering into a lease agreement with Niagara Regional Broadband Network for the point of presence in City Hall. Bylaw 63846416 being a bylaw to authorize entering into an encroachment agreement regarding 78 Clarence Street. Bylaw 63856516 being a bylaw to close temporarily to vehicular traffic sections of various streets for purposes of the Salsa on the Canal Street Dance. And finally, bylaw 63866616 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of July 25th, 2016.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Well, sure we had to move everything. It was Councilor Elliott and Councilor Danch. All those in favor? Opposed? It was carried. Entertain a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councilor Danch. Sorry. Seconded by Councilor Demery. Thank you very much.